This is my BMW R80 project bike. And it's got so many problems. For a start, the forks are leaking. There's no brake pad inside the rear drum. It's got a cheap Chinese fake leather seat from eBay. The engine could definitely do with a respray, as you can see. But looking at it, this bike's actually got a lot less miles than you might think. And I got it for what I think was a really good deal. Of course, not everything on this bike is perfect. And obviously this bike needs a lot of work to get it to where I want it to be. But that is all part of the fun. But first, there's a much bigger issue I need to try and fix. When I bought this bike, it was literally a frame, an engine, and no electronics, nothing was wired up. So I chose to buy a Motogadget unit, which basically allows me to rewire the whole bike and run it off a single unit, which works with Bluetooth. This essentially allows me to use my phone as the key, which was the idea, but that's since stopped working. Now, originally I didn't fit a key, because I thought that the idea of walking up to my bike with my phone and starting it was pretty cool. And if it had that feature, I wanted to use it. But a couple of times now, I've ended up stranded at the side of the road where it just doesn't recognize my phone. I walk up to the bike and it will just, usually it'll light up. The indicators will turn on and off to show that it's recognized you're there. And then you can start the bike. But for some reason, it seems to not do that sometimes. And it means that I have to carry around tools all the time, because a lot of the time disconnecting the battery and reconnecting it will then allow it to work. But here's the thing. The other day I went out and that didn't work. Reconnecting it didn't make it work again. So I ended up having to wire on a separate wire, which basically made the bike permanently on, like what a key would have done. Originally, when it was doing this, I messaged the company and I told them about it, and they basically told me there was a firmware update, which I hadn't done. So I did it thinking problem solved, and for a few weeks it was absolutely fine and it worked every single time. But now, since it's happened again, I'm thinking that maybe it's not fixed. So I'm going to give in and I'm going to finally fit a key to this bike. This is the key I've come up with. I think it was advertised on eBay for use with the Mini, but I think it's going to work just fine. What I want to do is I want to fit this behind this piece of metal, so it's about here. And I've looked and there's enough space to do it, so that's going to be about where it sits. There is actually another problem with this bike where it cuts out in the rain, and that's left me stranded a couple of times.
What is it now? What is it now? Fucking pissing.
What's up, bro?
Hey, yo, how's it going, man?
Not bad, yourself?
I've been better.
But I think I know what that is. But in order to get to the piece to fit the key, and also to fix this other problem, I'm going to have to take the tank off, which means draining it and then removing it. Now, the best thing about this bike is it's held together by zip ties, so it's all pretty easy to take apart. As you can see, the seat's just held on here mostly by zip ties at the back, so I'm just taking those off. Another reason why I wanted to take the tank off is because I should have put one of these in here the first time when I put the tap on. It's basically like a fuel strainer, especially since when I bought this tank it was full of rust I managed to clean most of it out, but it's still quite rusty in there. And I've been having problems where the carbs are getting a little bit full of rust. So hopefully this little strainer will help with some of that. That is really manky. This is probably some of the most disgusting fuel I've ever seen. I'm not surprised I was having problems with the carbs. As you can see, there was a lot of rubbish inside the tank. So I've got this little strainer, which is going to go on the top of the tap, and then also this gasket, which I never put on the first time, and I should have done. But I didn't know it existed at that point, so it's going on this time. So I got some carb cleaner here. I'm going to try and clean this up. Before I had a load of tape on there, like plumbing tape, and I realised that's probably not the best thing to have used, so now I'm going to go with this gasket and hopefully that'll be enough. I'm not entirely sure how this fits, but it looks like it must go like this. Right, okay, so clean this up, put it a little bit back together. I think the order this is meant to go in is the gasket there, because there's a hole in there which this tall straw I think goes into, and that's what holds this one down. Like that. Now we just have to put it back on. Okay, so I've done this up a lot tighter now, and it doesn't seem to be leaking. I've also swapped those tubes around because I had them in the wrong holes, so this should come on when I switch to reserve. It does. And it probably won't, there we go, when it switched it on, because there's not enough fuel in there. Nice. Now, as I said before, when I bought this bike, I felt like it was a bit of a bargain, and the reason for that, this bike didn't have the original clocks when I bought it, so I didn't actually know what mileage it was on. The seller had told me that it hadn't been on the road for a very long time. I checked the MOT against the registration, and it basically showed me that online there was no record of it at all, which meant that it hadn't been MOT'd since they'd brought in the new regulations where it would be put online, and that was over 16 years ago. I think it was in 2004 that they brought that in. So it told me that the bike hadn't been started in probably 19 years. The last record I have of an MOT, the previous seller sent to me afterwards in the post, because it was a paper MOT, and the record of the mileage shows me 20,000 miles, which for one of these engines is absolutely nothing. I've seen forums of people saying they've gone easily over 100,000 miles. Some of them have even gone up to 300,000 miles. So I think 20,000 miles for this engine is barely even running. Now to get on with fitting that key. Now for this I bought a 20mm hole saw, which should be good for metal, to basically cut the hole for this key. Should be just about perfect for this. Got to figure out where I want it there.
And now all that's left to do is crimp some terminals on the end of these wires to connect the battery to the key and then the key to the M-unit. And right here I'm just cutting off the ring terminal that I've mentioned on the cable earlier that was like the permanent on switch. Basically was just attached straight to the battery, but I'm going to replace that with a spade terminal that's then going to join up to the key.
So, now for the moment of truth. If I turn this key, then this M-unit should light up. Hey! It looks like it works. Nice. Another thing I think this makes this bike a good deal is I only paid £1,500 for it.
Or about 1900 dollhouse.
Which, when you see the state that it was in, seems fair, but considering I didn't really want any of the original parts anyway, it didn't really matter. Another problem I'm having with this bike is it keeps cutting out in the wet. Every time it rains, it'll just die, and it's left me stranded a couple of times. So I think the coil's the problem. This is the coil that's fitted to these bikes as standard, I think, and a lot of people call it the Crack-O-Matic because it seems to crack, and it looks like someone's already repaired it with JB Weld or something. So I think that's got to come off. I've already got a replacement, and hopefully that's going to stop it from cutting out in the rain, because it's becoming pretty annoying. Now I could have gone with an OEM coil, but they seem to be extremely expensive, and I've heard a pretty good upgrade is one of these Endurolast coils. So I've gone for the 1.5 ohm. I'm going to see how it works, see if it's any better than the original. A few little bits. Also bought this bracket from Motorworks, which basically allows me to mount this in the same place my original coil would have been in. Now I'm pretty certain this coil is the problem. Looking at the cracks that are on here. Just in there's a big old crack. Looks like it's been repaired or something. That's just about had it, I think. Well, we've got a bit of a problem here because it looks as though the wires that would have attached to the coil don't now reach, and they go all the way across to this piece here. I think I'm going to have to extend them somehow. This might look a bit confusing because I put a like a bus bar here, so there's a lot of wires. A lot of wires going around, but maybe I'll do something. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these cables out and run them round the outside just so they reach. So I've taken this piece off just to pass these wires back through. Hopefully they'll be able to reach now. Well, I think I'm going to have to extend them. I want to test that it actually works first. The only way to do that is to plug it in. I'm sure this ignition module grounds on the frame, so I'm going to have to put this back on. All that's left to do now is to plug in the HT leads again. I'm not going to seal them, doesn't really matter for the minute. And hopefully with a bit of luck, these are going to spark. Although I will have to reconnect the battery, it's not going to work very well without that. So I've reconnected the battery, and then hopefully these will spark if I hold them against the engine. Helps if you turn the bike on. Seems to work. So that's going to be about it for today. Got a few things done. Hopefully I'm not going to get stranded anymore, either in the rain or because the Motogadget doesn't want to work. But we'll see how that goes. There's still plenty more to do on this bike, so thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.